She had told me they were playing hide and seek, they had drank, she was trying to teach him a lesson, and that was that. She went upstairs, she went to sleep, she woke up, she doesn't know what happened.
What was she yelling about?
Something about choking or how he choked her. I really don't. That was it.
What did you advise her to do?
I told her she needed to call 911 and that I would come over as soon as I could.
After countless delays, reschedulings, and attorneys, the Suitcase murder trial against Sarah Boone finally gets underway. We're on the ground in Orlando, Florida, with a live report for you ahead of day number 2. And there are still so many unanswered questions surrounding singer Liam Payne's death. Will someone be held legally responsible? Also this hour, we're spotlighting the parenting of Leilani Simon as she stands trial accused of the murder of her son, Quentin. We're diving deeper into the accusations of child abuse. Plus, we've got a bond hearing for OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney taking an unexpected turn as the defense introduces a video of knives being thrown at a pig carcass to prove their case. Could it tip the scales? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning, friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. We hope you had a wonderful weekend. We've got a wonderful show planned for you, so let's get right to it. Go ahead and grab that cup of coffee or tea or hot water with lemon, whatever you like in the morning. It is time now for my opening statement. It didn't happen in a vacuum. Baby Quentin Simon's brutal, disrespectful death didn't happen in a vacuum. Seems to me that lying Leilani wanted the world to believe that his sudden kidnapping by some random stranger just happened out of the blue. And poor her, oh poor her, she's the victim of a tragedy. Pants on fire, Leilani Simon. I tell you what, my friends, this trial testimony makes me sick. Baby Quentin's babysitter helped bring that house of cards right down, sharing with the jury how Leilani favored her other 2 kids over little Quentin, how he would cry his eyes out because she would feed her older child before him and make him think that he wasn't going to get any food. Who does that? What kind of a sick, rotten mother deprives their helpless child of food and makes them cry tears before they give them any? When that babysitter would receive baby Quentin to care for him, he would arrive in dirty clothing and smell of rotten milk. Who does that? The babysitter knew that lying, crying, coked out Leilani Simon was a bad mom. And it sounds like precious baby Quentin knew too, as he would cry when his own mother would pick him up. But yet he would appear relieved and calm when his mom's boyfriend, Daniel Youngkin, would pick him up instead. It is very clear to me that baby Quentin Simon suffered long before the day he was murdered. It seems that his brutal, disrespectful death and disposal was the culmination of the treatment that he received from his mother during his short life. Baby Quentin, you deserved far better. May whomever murdered you pay a dear price. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Before we get to your daily docket, we have some breaking news we want to share. As the mother of 3-year-old Elijah Vu, remember him missing for months? Her boyfriend, she and her boyfriend are now facing charges in connection to little Elijah's death. Elijah reported missing back in February. You'll recall his remains found just last month, 3 miles from the home where he lived. Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang are expected to be back in court today to have their initial appearance on these new charges. Now, Bauer is charged with chronic child neglect with a consequence of death and child neglect and obstruction of justice. Jesse Vang is charged with physical abuse of a child causing death, hiding a corpse, and obstructing an officer. The criminal complaint includes testimony from a child abuse expert who says that evidence shows that Vu was tortured during his short life. Court TV is going to be following this case closely as Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang have now been charged in connection with Elijah Vu's death and disappearance. This is huge news this morning. We're going to be following as the two are expected to be in court today. We're working to get more information on that. We're going to bring you all the very latest details as they come in, as little Elijah certainly deserves justice.
Scott eventually kind of joined. It was like a little search party. And we ended up just like searching all of the places on the property until we eventually found the burn pile.
In Georgia, we've got the burn pile murder trial against Melody Farris starting up at 9 a.m. The state's expected to play Farris's jailhouse phone calls. Also happening in Georgia, we've got testimony resuming in the toddler in a landfill murder trial. Court convenes in that one at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And in Florida, we've got Sarah Boone back in court for day 2 of the Suitcase murder trial. That starts up at 9 a.m. We'll go there live together when it does. And that is our top story this morning, the murder trial of Sarah Boone. She's accused of zipping her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, up in a suitcase and leaving him there to die. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft is in Orlando with the very latest.
Good morning, Julie. Day 2 of testimony will be getting underway shortly here in Orlando for the Sarah Boone case. On Friday, the state called numerous witnesses and showed jurors a lot of evidence. The most compelling moment when the crime scene investigator pulled the suitcase from the cardboard box sitting in the courtroom. Jorge Torres died inside that suitcase. Jurors stretched from their seats to get a view. Also shown to the jury, a bat. Also wine bottles recovered from the scene. Sarah Boone listened closely as her ex-husband took the stand.
What did she tell you on the phone?
That George was dead, and if I would come over.
Did she say what happened to him?
I don't remember if she told me then on the phone or when I got there, but she told me they had been playing hide and seek and that she fell asleep.
What did you advise her to do?
I told her she needed to call 911 and that I would come over as soon as I could.
The state told jurors Sarah Boone left Jorge Torres in the suitcase to die because she felt he deserved it. Defense counsel told jurors Sarah Boone loved George and not to rush to judgment. And Julie, Sarah Boone will be testifying in this case. And that's what her defense counsel told jurors during his opening statement. But we're going to have to wait until the state is finished presenting its case. Proceedings get underway at 9 a.m. Eastern. In Orlando, Kelly Craft. Julie, back to you.
All right, our thanks to Kelly Craft for that early update. Now let me bring in my legal analyst guest, a retired criminal defense attorney, famously represented Jodi Arias and saved her life. Kirk Nurmi on the show this morning. Good morning to you, Kirk. Lots to talk about with Sarah Boone here. My goodness. Let me just start with your impressions of day number 1. I know you were watching things, looking at it all objectively. How were you feeling when you walked away at the end of the court day?
Well, look, this is just more fuel to the fire. I mean, we saw, I've always, my analyst in this case has always been just play the tape. And certainly we're getting some evidence that extends outside the tape. We're seeing her inconsistent statements, all those sort of things that are going to set her up. And I know, one thing I can glean about Sarah Boone, we saw her flyer and everything else. We know, as Kelly reported, she's going to take the stand. I think she fancies herself a celebrity, she sees herself as the victim. She's going to be a champion. She's going to get up on that stand and tout herself as such. But what we're seeing here is not only will the tape stand in contradiction to her personal beliefs about herself, but also some of the evidence we're seeing, the contradictions, the lies, etc., that she's going to have to answer for. And I tell you, Julie, she's not going to have an answer.
Right. Oh, I think you're absolutely right, my friend. You know better than anybody, really, what it's like to have a difficult client who won't listen to your sound advice, who wants to boss the world around. Tell us kind of what it's like representing someone like Sarah Boone.
Yeah, Julie, it makes me think of the interview Court TV did a few weeks ago with a couple of her prior attorneys, well, one of the 8 or 9 that preceded her current counsel, and they talk about it getting at every fiber of your being. And I understand that completely. I mean, this is something that I dealt with for 5.5 years, right? And I was trying to run away from the fire, and her current counsel ran towards it, and I bet he's starting to feel some of those things. I mean, you know, I saw your opening statement. We've all been looking at her, laughing at her motion for snacks. But it's that kind of thing, right? You volunteer, you're her counsel, you're working on important legal issues, so you give her adequate representation, and you find yourself arguing over snacks. And it's that kind of thing that is just belittling and what have you. And so I can see that this man is probably going to regret that he ran towards that fire, and is just going to be so happy when this trial is over. But we all should be grateful that he did, because this minimizes the chances that her conviction will be overturned on appeal.
Oh, such an excellent point. Kirk, thank you for that. I have a clip I want to play for you now. One of Sarah Boone's former neighbors took the stand, as you know, on Friday, talked about hearing the very, very loud noises the night that Jorge Torres died.
What about that evening sticks out to you?
That sticks out to me from that night was literally just there was a very, very loud noise that I heard that was loud and powerful enough to shake my bedroom wall. And I remember that because I was sitting on my bed on FaceTime with my girlfriend at the time, and I literally felt the wall shake, and it stopped me mid-conversation. And she even asked me through the computer, like, what was that? And I was like, I have no idea.
Kirk, you know, one thing that stood out to me, it sounds like this incident was a lot more violent than we first thought it was, right? We just heard about this game of hide and go seek and zipping him up in the suitcase, leaving him there to die. Now, so many questions about the suitcase possibly going down the stairs, questions about her taking a baseball bat to the suitcase, hitting his hands and his body potentially. What are your thoughts on the impact that a neighbor like this has on the jury?
I think this is huge, not only on the jury. I mean, I think the tape and her mocking him is enough for the jury. But we think about any contravening arguments that they could have about, you know, she didn't have a duty to rescue him, things of that nature, because we see the booze, we see the baseball bat, right? I mean, that's huge. And the possibility that Mr. Torres was flung down the stairs, that makes her not just a passive person who failed to assist, but an aggressor, which is what we see here. And this is going to, you know, we're seeing that bat now. This is going to stand in direct contradiction to any claim of self-defense through battered women syndrome, because we see here, if anyone's doing the battering, it's Sarah Boone.
Boom. Drop the mic. Kirk Nurmi, you said it so well right there. And we have some corroboration with this. The maintenance supervisor who formerly used to work at that building said something really interesting on the cross. Let's take a listen to what he said about Sarah Boone wanting to teach Jorge Torres a lesson.
She had told me they were playing hide and seek, they had drank. She was trying to teach him a lesson, and that was that. She went upstairs, she went to sleep, she woke up, she doesn't know what happened.
Ooh, Kirk, does this further chip away at her claims of battered spouse syndrome?
You bet. I mean, it makes Mr. Torres the victim of her domestic violence rather than the claim she's trying to make that she is in fact the victim. I mean, teaching him a lesson, those kind of languages, that's very aggressive. That's very, shall we say, premeditated, Julie? So yeah, I mean, this just wraps up a bow on this case more and more. And, you know, is more and more convinced that she is going to be found guilty. But what is really going to be interesting is what she has to say for herself. And I'm waiting for that to play out on Court TV.
Most definitely. Kirk Nurmi, so glad we have you on the program this morning. Stand by for more questions, kindly, please. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's still to come on opening statements.
But she just said that she loved Quentin more. I mean, Zane more than Quentin. And, you know, I didn't question it. She's a crappy mom. I knew that.
Leilani Simon's parenting comes into question during testimony in the toddler in a landfill murder trial. We're going to discuss it in our spotlight. And we'll tell you what's trending in true crime. Singer Liam Payne's death shocking the world. And this morning, so many mysteries still surrounding what happened. We're wondering, could anyone be held legally responsible? The 31-year-old's death remains in the headlines this morning as many fans continue to question what happened last week when the former One Direction band member fell to his death from a third-floor balcony at a hotel in Argentina. According to the preliminary autopsy report, Payne's cause of death was listed as polytrauma with internal and external bleeding. Here's a portion of the 911 call made by the hotel manager just minutes before the fatal fall.
Mando del Hotel Casa Sur Palermo, que queda en Costa Rica 6032.
Entraré a lo de Kramer.
Bueno, nada, tenemos un huésped que está sobrepasado de droga y está rompiendo toda la habitación. Así que necesitamos que venga alguien.
Entiendo, me dice entonces que es agresivo. Bajo efectos de alcohol y estupefaciente, ¿no, señor?
Sí, correcto.
So this morning we're asking the question, might anyone else be held legally responsible for Liam Payne's death? Let's bring in our power panel. Still with me, retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi, law enforcement expert Sonny Slaughter, and former prosecutor and SLED agent, the man who famously put away Susan Smith, attorney and lawmaker now, Tommy Pope. Good morning to you all. Tommy, I'd love to start with you on this one, please. Legally, who else might possibly be facing responsibility here?
Normally, I'd start with the lowest proof threshold, which would be civilly. And civilly, there may be people that provided the drugs or alcohol. You know, again, we got to understand what that country's laws are. Criminally, to me, it's a little, bit different. I don't really see it. We have started in South Carolina, for example, having some fentanyl death bills come through. In other words, prosecuting for someone delivering drugs or alcohol that cause death. We also see in civil here, dram shop, where the bar overserved somebody. So I don't really see a lot of criminality unless someone was in the room, but the impression I got from everything I've read thus far is he was intoxicated, under the influence of drugs, erratic behavior, and I mean, quite candidly, one of two things. He either fell from his intoxication, or he made a horrible choice.
Right, Tommy, right. Really important points you made, that there could be civil and criminal liability depending on the laws there in Argentina. And Sonny, I want to go to you next, please. I saw you nodding as Tommy mentioned how many states here in America are doing drug delivery resulting in death laws and prosecutions. If somebody has a batch of drugs and they distribute it to someone and it causes their death. I saw you nodding along. I wanted to get your thoughts on that particular point, please, Sonny.
Good morning, everyone. I agree with Tommy. I was thinking about this case and what could be the legal culpability of anyone else. And as Tommy said, we don't know what the laws are there, but it seemed like Liam was really going through a lot in his life, like many people are these days. Maybe there was some, depression and anxiety over what I've seen are recent events involving a girlfriend or potentially ex-girlfriend. And just a lot of things cascading over him. And we always have to remember that although these are celebrities, they are living real lives with real trauma. And could it have been that he was at the end of his rope and decided to, along with the drugs and alcohol, make an unfortunate decision like many people do, and just in the heat of the moment end it all? And I hope that is not the case, but that is part of what some people's reality is, and that could have been his.
Sonny, thank you. Certainly important points you're making here, and hearts are breaking no matter what the circumstances were. I mean, this man was beloved and so young, 31, to lose his life in this way. Some of the witness statements are really troubling and upsetting. I'm sure you've all seen interviews, read them as I have. I've been just scouring any bit of media I can get my hands on. One in particular, I saw an interview, a great interview that ITV did with a man who saw Liam Payne. It kept coming to the lobby. He said he kept coming to the lobby and was really appearing in distress and kept being sent back to his room. And It keeps making me think about whether the hotel will bear any civil responsibility. We know there was a phone call placed, but the witness said, his words, not mine, the witness said at one point it seemed like Liam Payne might have even been convulsing. And so I'm thinking, so if he's in the lobby and he's being sent back to his room, might the hotel be legally on the hook for not keeping him under supervision until the ambulance arrived? Kirk Nurmi, I would love to get your thoughts on that point, please.
You know, Julie, when I think about this, you know, and we can talk about the legal aspects, but I certainly think, and earlier we talked about my experience with Jodi Arias. I know that months after Jodi Arias' case was over, I was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And through the depression and some of the things that Sonny talked about, I really thought about rejecting chemotherapy because I wondered if my life was worth saving at that point in time. And ultimately, I came to the point where I believed that it was, and I saw that my problems, as unique as they were, had universal components, and there were people that could help. And when I think about Mr. Payne, you talk about that lobby, I think that he was going through some of those things, and really, maybe he did make a bad choice because his trips down to the lobby were really a connection, trying to get help, were really maybe a passive cry to get help. Maybe he didn't even fully understand it. And I don't think those cries for help come with civil liability. And I think the overarching of this is not just the legal consequences, but for people to understand out there that might be thinking this, that might be going through this depression, that there is help, there is available, and there are brighter days ahead.
Kirk, thank you for sharing something so deeply personal. I want to cry right now. I had no idea that you went through that, and we all love you so much and are so sorry that you went through that, and so grateful that you made the choices you made, and you're such an inspiration to so many people for so many reasons, and that's just one more reason to add to that list, so thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about what investigators have found so far. So no signs that anyone else was involved, meaning, you know, a push or foul play, something like that. There's zero indication of anything like that that occurred. No wounds they found on his body to indicate foul play. They don't know, as our wonderful power panel noted, whether this could have been an intentional jump or an accidental fall from that third floor balcony.
Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente porque, bueno, yo no sé si corre riesgo la vida del huésped. Está en una habitación que tiene balcón y, bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo su vida. ¿Hace cuánto que está ahí o es un hotel de vivienda? No, es hace 2 o 3 días que está acá.
So there's still a tremendous amount of testing that needs to be done, the toxicology, to find out what exactly was in his system. Let's bring back in our power panel and talk. Investigators, you know, might believe at this point what they saw was powder cocaine and crack cocaine, but we can't be sure until we test it. We know that. Let's start there with the drug testing and where the investigation then may go. Sonny, let me begin with you on this, please.
So they're going to start with, as you said, testing the drugs to see were they pure, were they tainted. You know, Tommy talked earlier about fentanyl, which has been showing up in a lot of drugs these days that are causing not only erratic behavior, but also death. And as a part of that investigation, they are going to be looking at who supplied it, particularly if it's tainted. Where did he get it from? The United States? Did he get it there? And who all of those individuals are. Maybe not attaching them to any criminal investigation, but possibly. And what else could have been going on? Did he take something else? Did he inject himself with something else? And did that play a role in his death? So they are going to be looking to connect the dots intentionally around any criminality, and that could show up, as Kirk said earlier, in civil or potential civil liabilities, but maybe not necessarily. But they're going to be testing everything, dusting for fingerprints, and looking for potential others who may or may not have been in that room at some point in time.
Sonny, thank you. Tommy Pope, you did undercover narcotics work for a long time. Tell us, do you think investigators have already hit the streets trying to figure out who might have sold the drugs, procured them, be distributing them in that area of Argentina?
I think they will make that step. I'll tell you, it's a difficult step, because, unlike what we see on Breaking Bad or something where they got special colors or special envelopes, the packaging's not always the same. The purity's not always the same. So I think it'll be difficult unless you have an informant, if they can track down someone who's telling them what was going on. And so there's a lot of puzzle pieces that are left to unravel.
Most certainly. Kirk Nurmi, want to go to you next, please. In terms of how soon we may get answers and whether we may see lawsuits, what are your thoughts on how quickly this investigation may unfold?
Boy, I think Tommy hit the nail on the head as it relates to the difficulty of it. It may not be easy unless we do have an insider. We think about Matthew Perry and this assistant that was helping procure and inject the ketamine. Is there a person like that in this man's life that was kind of a go-between? Because in that arena, then we could have the potential for civil criminal liability, and we could get further explanation. But without a person like that, I think, it is going to be difficult, as Tommy said, to tie these drugs to a certain individual for either criminal or civil liability. So it could take days, because if we have an informant, but if it doesn't, if there's no inside person, it's going to be tough.
Most definitely. Perfect note to end on there. We send our love to Liam Payne's family, all of his loved ones, and we'll report any information as it comes in. Kirk Nurmi, we've got to say goodbye only for now to you, and a big thank you for your legal expertise and for sharing that personal story. You are wonderful. We love you so much. Still to come here on Opening Statements, we've got testimony from the toddler in a landfill murder trial revealing some moments of child abuse from Leilani Simon that led up to Quentin's disappearance. That's right, he didn't just disappear. There were some bad things that happened before that. We're bringing in a parenting psychologist to talk about it next. And we got some wild video. Look at this, introduced at Courtney Clenney's last bond hearing. Will this prove that she was, in fact, acting in self-defense? We'll talk about it in What's Tipping the Scales.
She wasn't crying. I feel like that if something was to happen to one of my kids, I would be hysterical, and I would also be out looking for my child.
So you think objectively that everybody should act the way you think they should?
No, I don't think everybody should act, but a mother that has children, that you carry them in your stomach by your heart. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't she?
This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the toddler in a landfill murder trial with a focus on the parenting of defendant Leilani Simon. Day 6 is set to begin this morning. Last week, jurors heard some testimony from a couple of witnesses and some firsthand accounts of Simon's actions. Her actions as a mother long before Quentin disappeared. We had former neighbor Melody Bowling, who spoke to Simon, spoke about her resenting little baby Quentin. She made a pretty shocking admission, apparently, after baby Quentin was born. Take a listen.
She would say how she wished maybe if I didn't have Quentin, if I would have had the abortion like Bubba wanted me to, he would still be here.
Now, is that something she said to you after Quentin had been born?
She has mentioned it after and while she was pregnant, yes.
Oh, and that wasn't all. There's more that this woman said that Leilani Simon did to little Quentin. Let's bring in our guests and talk about it all. Still with me, law enforcement expert Sonny Slaughter, and want to welcome in forensic psychologist Dr. John Delatorre. Here's more from that neighbor, Melody Bowling, who talked about some of the verbal abuse that she witnessed toward baby Quentin.
There's been times when she has been getting on to Quentin, saying, "Will you get the down, you stupid little." She will call them, "You little." I told you to go do this. Now go do what the I said before I beat your ass. Called him a bastard child out of anger. I guess he was doing something like climbing on a table, and she told him to get down several times. And she's like, this is why I wish I never had you, wish I would have aborted you, and stuff like that.
Oh boy. Not surprising after what the prosecution shared with us in the opening statements. They said she loved Quentin less than her other children, and this testimony fully supports that. Dr. John Delatorre, for people listening to this, and how could a mother feel this way about one of her kids? What do you say to that?
Well, I think we got to make sure that we're using that title appropriately. She never really viewed herself as the mother of Quentin. Now, maybe she viewed herself as the mother of her other children, but certainly not Quentin. And once you detach yourself from that title, then you can start using and abusing, right, the child in whatever way you see fit. You can start blaming them for any of the other misfortunes that are happening in your life. And it really is about that detachment and that lack of connection, that lack of bonding that appears to have happened in this case.
All right. That's interesting, Dr. John. So she didn't see herself as a mother to Quentin, you say. That helps a lot of things make some more sense. Let's listen to what the former babysitter, Michelle McCarta, said, talking about the favoritism going on with the other children and Quentin.
Quentin loved food, and every time he seen a bag, he would want it. He's little. She would feed Zane before she fed Quentin, every time. And I just thought that was strange.
So do you mean she'd give Zane food and make Quentin wait?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
She wasn't physically feeding Zane at that.
No, she would give him the food.
Just give him food.
And he would eat, and then Quentin would be, whining and wanting it, and she would give it to him eventually.
So more things that she would do to torment little baby Quentin. Sonny Slaughter, tapping into your experience as an investigator, when we saw Leilani Simon come out to the world and say, my gosh, someone came in my house and took my baby, it was stunning. But then as we listen to the trial, this doesn't seem so stunning, does it? I'm curious your thoughts on what happened prior to this, if you're at all surprised, knowing what you know from your years of service in law enforcement, that she didn't treat Quentin all that great before his disappearance.
I'm not surprised. I agree with Dr. Delatorre that clearly she did not see herself as the mother. And when you look at the interview that she did with law enforcement, and first the hysterics, and then the second interview when she's being questioned in a way that clearly indicates law enforcement does not believe what she is saying. And she is literally told that, no, I don't believe what you are saying. She becomes apprehensive, and her body language changes and her tone changes. But I'm also concerned about the individuals who saw this type of treatment to an infant child and said and did nothing. Them coming forward now it's too late. There is clearly an indication that people are seeing things that are happening in the lives of others and doing nothing, and particularly when the child is so innocent and vulnerable. She did not love this child. She did not care about Quentin, and the fact that we are here now should not be a surprise to any of us. And those that knew her and those that witnessed this should not be a surprise to them. And I think they played some role in not helping him when they could have and should have.
Oh, I like what you're saying there, Sonny. Great points. Thank you for that. Dr. John, let me go back to you on the psychology behind this. So this woman's 22 years old. She's the mother of 3 young children, all 3 different fathers. She's living with the father of the 3rd baby, Daniel Youngkin. No contact with baby Quentin's dad. Not sure of the circumstances with the oldest child's father. But it seems that she's longing for the attention of Daniel Youngkin and just not getting it. What kind of mental anguish or mental distress do you think was going on for her at that young age with those 3 kids? Throw in the drug abuse as well and the attention deficit that's going on with Youngkin. What does this make for? What kind of psychological recipe do we have here?
Yeah, listen, my job is to explain, never to excuse someone's poor behavior. But as you said, Julie, I mean, this is someone who's desperate. This is someone who's longing. This is someone who's young, who doesn't know how to parent, who doesn't know how to cope with all the stressors of having multiple children from multiple guys, wanting desperately to have the attention of one guy and she's not getting it, seeing that this guy has an attachment to the child that she automatically starts hating and resenting. There's so much that's going on, and because it is her youth and because she hasn't had a strong bond with some other adult female that she can talk to about this, or a therapist that she can go to, she's trying to work through this all by herself, and through her immaturity, she's using her emotionality as the guiding force for her decisions. And unfortunately, young Quentin is the victim of this.
Right, Dr. John. What ideally, in a perfect world, what should Leilani Simon have done, Dr. John?
I mean, listen, there's societal issues that are at play here. Why wouldn't someone at her age have wraparound services to help teach her to be a mother, to have parenting classes, right? I think there are things that are a lot more that's going on that are external, not necessarily internal. I mean, obviously having a therapist or something like that. There are a lot of things that I think every person would find valuable, that would automatically negate and mitigate some of these problematic behaviors that a lot of parents go through.
Mm-hmm. Right. How we wish she would have reached out to someone, anyone, gotten some help. Clearly she was in distress. We've seen the video message, and now look at this. I mean, this is just, quite frankly, I don't know how there's any coming back from this, whatever way this goes. Even if it's a not guilty verdict, this is horrible what's occurred here, and baby Quentin can't come back. Thank you both. We're going to leave it here for now. And Dr. John, I know we have to say goodbye to you. Thank you for lending us your expertise this morning. Sonny, we're going to see you back for Court TV Live when we go to Florida for the Sarah Boone case, so looking forward to that. When we come back after this break, we're going to talk about OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney, and look at this video that was played at her bond hearing. Yeah, it's a guy throwing knives at a pig carcass. And this might prove she acted in self-defense. We'll talk about it. And day 2 of the Suitcase murder trial resumes at 9 a.m. We're going there live together.
She had told me they were playing hide and seek, they had drank. She was trying to teach him a lesson, and that was that. She went upstairs, she went to sleep, she woke up, she doesn't know what happened.
Tell me, Mr. Saeed, in your own words, what happened that night?
On the next Interview with a Killer, the convicted murderer of the horrific honor killings.
Did you kill your daughters to shut them up?
Very funny, really. I'm laughing. Do you see me? I laugh.
Speaks out for the first time on camera.
You make it sound like you're the victim.
Exactly.
Interview with a Killer, Sunday, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the case of OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney, accused of murdering her boyfriend Christian Albumselli. Prosecutors allege that she stabbed him during an altercation in their South Florida apartment. They say that it was murder. Her defense team says that she threw the knife in self-defense. Now on Friday, guess what the defense team did? This is brilliant. They took video from a man throwing a knife at a pig carcass, same distance Courtney Clenney was from Christian Albumselli, to see what the possibility would be of a weapon like that penetrating the flesh of a human. So we're wondering, could this video evidence, they were using it at a bond hearing just to try to get her out of jail, but bet they're going to use it at trial. What might this do? When you see it, it really makes a difference, right? Versus her just saying, oh, I threw this knife at him and it hit him in the chest. Prosecutors said all along that didn't happen. It was a downward angle the knife went in at, and meaning that she plunged it on his chest when he must have been laying down. But then you see this, and this sheds a whole new light on it. Look at that downward angle right there. Let's bring in attorney Tommy Pope and talk more about this. Oh boy, Tommy, in all your years in the courtroom, have you ever seen something like this?
Well, I was thinking, I probably have seen something I came up with, like during the Smith trial when we rolled the car in the lake. We picked that up from some experts in Detroit who had done flotation characteristics. So, you basically are kind of creating out of whole cloth, and then you've got to show that it is enough similar to be probative for the jurors. I don't know, and I think you led off with this, what this has to do with the bond hearing that could not have been done by saying we will have an expert that can demonstrate it, without showing it. I think it's more for the dramatic effect. And, I guess we go from OnlyFans to, maybe this guy's looking for his 15 minutes of fame while he's throwing knives. But
right.
I don't know that you could use the substance without using it. Matter of fact, I would want to save it for the drama of it, to save it in front of a jury.
Right, Tommy. It's interesting because we've talked a lot with Frank and Sabrina, Frank Prieto and Sabrina Puglisi, who were the attorneys representing Courtney Clenney. They are heavy hitters in Miami. I mean, they've got a world of experience. They know their stuff. And I remember one day, Sabrina saying on the program, she goes, we've got a knife expert. She goes, I actually did it myself through the course of this, doing our investigation to see if what Courtney's saying is true, if she's being truthful about this and the way in which it's happening. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, I mean, for them to go to these lengths, and then here when you see the visual, Tommy, I think you're right. I think maybe this was about putting it out in the public world of consumption so that people can go, oh, maybe Courtney Clenney's statement wasn't all that crazy, right? When she said it sounded a little wild. Oh, you threw the knife and it plunged in his body, but then this, what do you think, Tommy? That trial, could this change things?
Julie, I think you're spot on. I think they're working a bigger audience. They're working a potential jury pool. They're working, the court of public opinion. I'm an old Southern boy. I hate to see them wasting all that barbecue, just for bond hearing. But, it has its place. And like you said, and I've seen some information about these attorneys too, and their battles with the prosecutor's office. And I think they're up in their game. And as you've seen, and the very reason you and I are here on television today, the interest in these things has transcended what used to be, let's just keep it in the courthouse and we'll deal with it as it happens. I see a lot more playing out. I always tell you, Susan Smith went from a monster to a victim in 6 months, so I see where they're working it.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? You know better than anybody, Tommy Pope, how to handle these high-profile cases.